Jin Alpha horror nostalgia. Before I get into it, let me explain what I'm talking about. Horror nostalgia can be classified as something that creeped you out or frightened you as a child, but still somewhat haunts you to this day. The way I view it, it doesn't have to be limited to pieces of media related to horror or anything made with the intention to scare someone. For example, I used to be terrified of certain SpongeBob episodes as a child. You guys know what I'm talking about. Those weird scenes where the camera would zoom in on SpongeBob or another character's face, and it'd be all detailed and disgusting. Ugh. But yeah, that's an example of something that scared me as a kid. Now let's look at some of the things that'll traumatize Gen Alpha. Seeing how Gen Alpha started in 2010, I'm gonna count everything 2016 and up as Gen Alpha horror nostalgia. Because I was around the age of 6 whenever I started getting traumatized by things I saw on TV shows and online. Meat Canyon. We're starting off strong here, folks. Now, while Meat Canyon isn't considered kids' entertainment, it's possible for a child to stumble upon it and mistake it as such, seeing how it's animated. If you somehow don't know who he is, he's basically this guy that's known for making grotesque animations with a disturbing and dark undertone to him. Meat Canyon's channel is mainly centered around humor, but these animations specifically were his most disturbing. I could see an entire generation of children getting traumatized by his channel. If I had to pick one specifically, I'd say I can count to 3. The uncanniness of Peppa's character design, Hunter's incredible voice acting in the background, and the brutality of each character's gruesome death. Any character drawn normally in a Meat Canyon cartoon has a high chance of perishing in the most brutal or painful way possible. Most of the time for absolutely no reason too. Now that we're on the topic of disturbing channels, Exploshi is probably on the same level as disturbing, if not even worse than Meat Canyon. While she doesn't upload nearly as frequently as Meat Canyon, the way she depicts beloved TV shows and video game characters doesn't sit right with me. I view Meat Canyon as a less scary / disturbing version of Exploshi, seeing how its cartoons have a more comedy aspect towards them. For the most part, in my opinion, at least Exploshi does everything in her power to ensure whoever's watching can't sleep afterwards.
Whatever comes next, know this. I am alive, I am aware, and soon I will be free.
The way it's animated and edited gives you a feeling of late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia, like you've seen or done all this before. The analog horror attribute of her channel's videos don't do anything but make them more unsettling and harder to watch. I think I can say with 100% confidence if I watched this as a kid I'd have nightmares about it for weeks. All of her videos remind me of that The Amazing World of Gumball episode with a little Teddy segment in it, but much worse. I could probably go on for another hour about Explosion alone, but I have to move on to the next fear. But I will say, these videos specifically stood out to me. In 2023 was probably her peak in terms of scariness. The Stranger Danger Puppet Show, White Stag Education. It's a new analog horror series which first made its debut on October 22nd, 2022. Produced by a team called After 10 Productions. There are 3 main videos on the White Stag Education channel, but I mainly want to go over this one. I'm sure a lot of you didn't even know this video existed, so I'm going to try to explain it in the best way possible. It starts off with the first person perspective of the inside of a cartoon house. You're greeted by 2 puppets, one named Rex and the other one named Ann. The 2 of them lead you to the forest where you get introduced to the park ranger. The entire vibe of the video feels off for the first few minutes despite nothing happening yet. Rex starts to question the viewer, asking Park Ranger Luke if they're a stranger. That word gets used heavily in this video, but it isn't used for its actual definition. Rather than using it to refer to someone you don't recognize, they use it to label someone or something dangerous that you do recognize. This is displayed in the song Luke sings.
Remember that story from way back when? If you can't recall, let me tell it again. This is the story of Little Red. Went to visit Granny who was sick in her bed.
It's practically the analog horror version of the Little Red Riding Hood, but basically this little girl goes into the woods to visit her grandmother. After a few hours of walking, she hears birds singing in the air but looked up and none of them were there. She realized she's going in the wrong direction, so she changes up her path and then makes it to her grandmother's house. But when she gets there, the old grandma is nowhere to be found. But instead she's greeted by a stranger who may or may not be her grandmother wearing an unsettling fox mask.
It was too late, Granny locked the door. Fred saw her face, it wasn't her.
The audio glitches out and the screen goes black. Seeing how the story gets discontinued and footage cuts back to Luke singing, it's safe to say that she did not survive. The video then transitions to 2 characters named Oswald and Gleason lost in the forest. They then start to hear an odd and unpredictable pattern of whistling. It starts to get more and more intense, then turns into a roar which rumbles the entire puppet's surroundings. The video cuts to black again and transitions to the next scene. This part isn't particularly scary or important though, it's just to spot the stranger game. Strangers being 2 gloves with poorly drawn animals' faces on them. After a few rounds, the game concludes. A rumbling sound similar to the one from earlier could be heard in the background, with the caption, "It rises beneath the forest." Then the scene just ends and cuts to the conclusion. The puppets take turns talking about their days, but something Ranger Luke says stands out to me. I'll tell you why in a second.
Always remember, strangers have no regard for your well-being. They aren't like us. Do not follow them into the woods, no matter how friendly they look.
The outro plays displaying 4 pictures of children who were lost in the barren pines and never returned. All of them obviously representing the 4 puppets we've been with. After that, it goes to credits and ends. Before I move on to the next sphere, I wanted to look at some of the comments.
The previous line ended with the word door, and the song itself has a pretty definite rhyme scheme, so it's pretty likely the last line was actually, "It wasn't her anymore," which is terrifying.
That ending when he says don't follow them into the woods no matter how friendly they seem, and you realize that's exactly what you did by following the friendly-seeming puppets. Great finishing line.
There's clearly much more to comment on, but we're moving on. Skibidi Toilet. Now hold on a second and know what you're gonna say. This isn't a horror series. Well, it still falls under the category as something that wasn't made with the intention to be scary but still has a chance of freaking somebody out. It's also incredibly popular amongst the Gen Alpha community. I mean, they might even be getting their own movie soon. There's a lot of lore in this series, but in order to actually understand it, I have to watch the entire thing, which I don't want to do, because I'm sure there's over 20 seasons by now, and I have to get this video out by Halloween, and I'm sure watching that many episodes would have detrimental effects on my brain. So let's move on. Number 4, and this is a big one, The Backrooms. The Backrooms made its first debut in early 2022, uploaded on the Kane Pixels YouTube channel. The entire video stemmed from a photo found online about 20 years ago. Basic premise of it is that no clipping out of reality by accident will have you sent to the endless maze of hallways. But depending on what level you clip in could depend on how much danger you're in. The use of liminal spaces gives it a familiar nostalgic feeling. With miles upon miles of ground within each level, there's no sign of escape or hope. There also happen to be these hideous, deadly creatures named entities in almost every level, which will make it even harder to survive. The original video itself only includes one type of entity called Howler. It's either that or bacteria. I'm gonna call it Howler though because it's more fitting. The video mainly includes the cameraman walking around various levels, showcasing how massive it was before the internet touched it. The Backrooms were already really big and scary before becoming mainstream. They might also be getting their own movie as well, which I'm actually looking forward to. Seeing how the original video on the original channel exploded, the amount of children that have been traumatized by it is probably in the millions by now. Smiling Friends. Or rather, these 3 episodes specifically. Mainly the Spamtopia one. The entire show has a disturbing moment or 2 in each episode, but these ones specifically have a higher chance of disturbing kids. I understand children are their demographic audience, but its colorful and stimulating art style could lure children into thinking it's for them. Mr. Boss and Pin drive to Spamtopia. Once they arrive, they're informed of the city's one rule: don't look anyone in the eyes. I find it really disrespectful. Guess what happens within the first few minutes of the episode? Anyways, Oscar goes full Enderman on Pim and rips him in half. Haha, just kidding. At the last second, Oscar recognizes Pim as his old pen pal and spares his life. In the end, Oscar decides to let him go after Pim heals his insecurity above his eye. He then declares Spamtopia lawless. Then it really starts feeling like an explosion video because everybody's really dying. All the chaos and violence going on makes Mr. Boss and Pim want to leave, and they just barely make it out, but eventually they're back safe and sound in the office. I can already imagine this airing at 2 AM for some unsuspecting kid to get traumatized by. I have one more, but I want to go through the honorable mentions first. Because there are simply too many to list, I can't put them all in one video and get it out on time, so here are the honorable.
Statement on the existential dread of our binary existence, horror expressed via the pure agony of being in a simulated reality, where being itself is completely meaningless.
Is that an egg?
Won't you help the lovely kitten? Won't you help the lovely kitten? Won't you help the Hey guys, today we're trying a new Grimace drink from McDonald's. First sip, here we go.
Might be able to.
Won't you come learn with me?
I'm a cactus.
I'm an egg. I'm immune to the plot, and I can transcend time and space. Also, I'm coming after you. You can figure out the rest. Have fun.
Lights are off, or anyone who makes those creepy 3D POV animations. But we're talking about lights are off because his are the scariest, and as far as I know, the most popular of all time. Let's take a look at his stats. If you add up his follower count for all three platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, it accumulates to 28,580,000 followers and subs, 546,535,300 likes, 8,222,635,215 views, at minimum. Yes, I really took the time to calculate all that. If you're curious, it took me a little over an hour. The like count is bigger than the population of the US, Mexico, Canada, and a bunch of European countries combined. The fact that there's no dialogue in any of these videos make them available to everybody to watch worldwide. Seeing how the view count is higher than the population of Earth. Even if 0.5% of the viewers are Gen Alpha, that still equates to over 41 million people. Lights Are Off has single-handedly outranked all the other viewers I listed, and it's not even close. I would honestly say Lights Are Off is the biggest childhood traumatizer, Gen Alpha-wise.
All living things bound by a string, summer to fall, winter to spring, we all sing in chorus the song